I'm
Boom.
so glad to be here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You sound
Oh,
great.
loud and clear.
So run us through it. Give us the breakdown. How are you processing today? How are things going?
Things are going really well. I mean, I think Q1, I mean, remember, obviously Shopify is a bit of a seasonal business, meaning Q4 is always like,
Yeah.
we're ultimately in retail. So Q4 is always a big quarter for us, but Q1 was amazing. Revenue was up 27%. We had
Mhm.
2.4 billion. Free cash flow margin hit 15%. So about $363 million. And then it was our seventh consecutive quarter of GMV growth above 20%. It was about 70, almost 75 billion, which GMV is always important because it speaks to how well merchants are doing on the platform. So I'm when Shopify does well, I'm obviously very proud. I'm especially proud now because I think this is,
Yeah.
just to say the thing, this is a very unpredictable market. And I think
Totally.
Yeah.
Shopify's superpower of agility really comes into play here. I actually mentioned something on the call that didn't really get picked up, but
Oh,
because
sorry.
you guys are interesting people, I'll share with you.
Please.
We've been public now for almost 10 years to the day.
Wow.
We had our IPO May 21st, 2015. And if you look back on the last 39 quarters, so 39 cohorts of merchants that have come on, 38 out of 39 cohorts of merchants on Shopify have outperformed the greater e-commerce market. So
Oh,
Wow.
one of the
wow.
things I'm very, very proud of is that merchants on Shopify seem to be doing really, really well. But I'm excited to be on your show. I mean, this is
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
this
Long
isn't a
time in
flex,
the
but
making.
I canceled mainstream media to do this
Oh,
because like
There we
it's
go.
so interesting.
We are the mainstream now. We are the
Right,
corporate
exactly.
funded
Well,
media.
listen, that has certain connotations. I think this is better than mainstream because
We
it's a
want
lot
to
more
be
thoughtful.
mainstream. Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, no, we love it. So yeah, I mean, you talked about the tumultuous market. There's a lot of headlines at the same time. Stock market went way down. Stock market's kind of back up. What should people be reading into new business formations, just broader entrepreneurship trends, and the data from Shopify about the health of the American entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, look, let me talk about macro a little bit first.
Sure.
We were around in 2008. We were a tiny little company, but I've spent almost a third of
Wasn't
my
it a
life.
snowboard shop originally?
Well, we were a
Yes.
snowboard shop in 2004,
Okay,
but
four.
yeah,
Yeah,
like we started a snowboard shop, and then
yeah,
I actually, when I was in law school, I don't know if you guys know this story, but
yeah.
when I was in law school, was born in Canada, grew up in South Florida, and ended up in college in Montreal at McGill, and then I went to law school in Ottawa, and I became one of the first merchants to use Shopify.
Oh, cool.
That's when I met Toby.
Yeah.
But 2008 happened, and actually one of the things we saw during the Great Financial Crisis
Cool.
was that a lot of people turn to entrepreneurship either as a way to replace their job, their income, or as a way to supplement their income if they had a reduced, had a reduced hours if they were working at a restaurant or a retail shop. During the pandemic as well, we sort of saw that during the pandemic all these physical retailers that some of them were laggards that had not really moved online yet began to move online at this amazing clip. So in many ways this is sort of Shopify kind of does well in these periods of uncertainty. But from our merchant perspective, we're not seeing any changes in our merchants so far. Our data actually through April, so beyond just the quarter, but through April does not suggest any slowdown. It's still obviously fairly early to assess some of these impacts,
Yeah.
but I think from a consumer perspective, one of the things that also happens is in times of disruption, it does feel like consumers and retailers, um, they kind of lean into brands that they know and they trust. And
Hmm.
you think about your favorite brands, I don't know, for me, it's like Viore and Aloe Yoga and James Purse, like all those brands are all on Shopify. So things have been really good for us. And I think that'll continue.
Yeah.
Talk about. I want you to talk about for a second the power of shop pay, just because as a consumer, I'm probably a DAU at this point.
Nice.
It's
Thank you.
truly. I mean, it's truly life changing. I would love to get your sense of kind of like what is making Shopify so dominant today. I mean, we talked to a lot of entrepreneurs and obviously like the core platform, but can you talk about how kind of the sort of like flywheel that Shop Pay is kind of creating in the ecosystem?
Yeah. I mean, Shop Pay is really interesting for two reasons. One is historically we've really been a merchant facing product, a merchant facing brand. So people kind of knew Shopify if you were a merchant, an entrepreneur. But for most people, like we were the brand behind the brand, you didn't really know us. And both the Shop app and more specifically to your point, Shop Pay is really the first time that I think people are seeing the Shopify brand in the wild. And actually, for the quarter, Shop Pay facilitated like $22 billion of GMV. That was up 57% year on year. If you look at the entirety, like cumulative GMV, we launched Shop Pay in 2017, and we've done about $225 billion on Shop Pay so far. Part of it is that I think companies, I mean, Amazon has done a really good job of this, actually. They've sort of reset consumer expectations for how commerce is done. And I think for a lot of consumers, because of that, they want, they want their products either shipped fast, or they want it, shipped cheap to them, or they want to be able to do one-click checkout. And so this idea of, we are not obviously a retailer, we're a platform. But if you were to pretend for a moment that Shopify was a single retailer, we would be the second largest online retailer in America after Amazon. We have millions of stores. We're about 12% market share in terms of all e-com in the US. I think Amazon somewhere in the 40s or something like that. So one of the things that we're able to do is, even though everyone on Shopify is an individual merchant with an independent business and independent brand, we're able to give them economies of scale as if they were the second largest retailer in America. And one of those obviously is Shop Pay, but Shop Pay has done incredibly well. And not just that, but we're also seeing that brands are now coming to Shopify specifically for Shop Pay. So we have something called Shop Pay Commerce Components, which allows merchants just to use Shop Pay. And the way we kind of think about it is that if you're a big, Coach is actually a good example of this, Kate Spade as well. If you're these brands that have, your own platform, maybe you're using a legacy platform, or you have your own homegrown system, you can actually use that component. And we sort of look at that as our way of starting a relationship with these very, very large brands. But Shop Pay has been incredible. In terms of the flywheel question, if you think, historically about how Shopify started 20 years ago, really the focus for us was just e-commerce for SMBs. And then some of those SMBs got really, really big. I mean, Gymshark got big. Viore got big. Fashion Nova got big. Bombas, Allbirds, these stores that started their mom's kitchen table became billion-dollar companies. And so one of the first changes was we sort of moved from just focusing only on SMBs to focusing on larger merchants as well, and especially those that sort of grew up on us, and that allowed established brands, Hunter Douglas, Mattel, On Running, that had their own systems to come and migrate entirely to Shopify. But the second thing that also happened was we began to think about, like, what is the future retail? Where's this thing going? And it became really obvious that the future retail was not just going to be this like false dichotomy of online versus offline. It's going to be retail everywhere. And that if you are going to be the entrepreneurship company, the retail operating system for the most important brands, you have to make it easy to sell on every surface area. And so we began to introduce things like point of sale and B2B, and embedding our checkout into places like Instagram and X and every social media platform. Obviously, YouTube is another one. We have an integration to Roblox now. So if you have a toy company on Shopify, or a company where your consumer is spending time in Roblox, now you can actually transact directly in Roblox, powered by Shopify. So the way that we kind of think about it is more of like a bunch of these different channels where commerce happens. AI shopping will likely be one of the
so that's an area I wanted to get to next, is basically LLMs. I think you guys have made some early meaningful moves here. How excited did you get about the intersection of shopping and LLMs as you started using some of these products just as a consumer, right? I think a lot of people just early on start using it maybe as an alternative to a Google search, and it was more for information. It wasn't purchase driven. And then we even had an employee from OpenAI on the show, and he was like, oh, every time I want to buy a product now, I just get a deep research, even if it's for something like bathroom towels or something like that. Because he's like, why wouldn't I want the equivalent of 3 hours of research on the right product to buy?
It feels a little bit like where social commerce sort of started, where it starts with discovery, doing research, finding new brands. You get served some, like, I don't know. I think actually, so one of my favorite stores on Shopify is Ember. You guys know this company?
I actually know the founder.
Great company.
Great company.
He's on Shopify. Please tell the founder that I use it every single day here in Montreal, at my office. But we start with discovery. I think I saw an ad, or I saw some sort of reel for Ember a couple of years ago. I was like, my coffee or my tea can stay warm longer. That sounds
Yeah.
really good. But I didn't
Yeah.
necessarily go to complete the purchase on Instagram. I then went to, I went to probably Google, typed in Ember, found
Yep.
the website, went on Shopify store and bought it. So I think sort of the trajectory of these new commerce channels starts with discovery and research first, and then eventually migrates into like full on checkout. So I think this idea that more people are going to discover and shop on these AI tools, whether it's a wrapper or it's something like OpenAI or Perplexity, I think that is an amazing thing. The way that we kind of think about it is anywhere where commerce is taking place, Shopify has the greatest product catalog in the world because we have the best stores in the world. We want to power those as well. So I'm not going to front run product roadmap, but you should expect to see Shopify merchants selling wherever their customers are, and if their customers are spending time on places on AI tools and LM models, you should expect that will be there as well. But what's really interesting, I think, about that is that it means that all these what's a good example? Let me use Spotify for example. Like,
Sure.
weird thing to say out loud, but like Shopify has an integration for Spotify. Okay,
Yeah.
why do we have that? Because
Yeah, so
most merchants don't have Spotify artist profiles. But if you're Beyonce and who owns Sacred, which is a great cosmetic company on Shopify, you have a huge artist profile. It makes so much sense for you to also have an embedded store inside your artist profile. In the same way that if you're Jim, if you're Mr. Beast, and you have a huge Shopify store with Feastables, you should also sell directly on your YouTube channel. Like, right there, embedded checkout. So that's kind of how we think about the future of retail. That like, where are these surface areas, new or old, that transactions should be taking place that they're not? And then what we do is we go to these companies and say, look, let us help power that, both discovery of great products, but also checkout, and in some cases even shop pay.
Yep, that makes sense. I want to do a little bit of a deep dive on AI. It's such a big topic. I'd like to break it up and understand how is Shopify thinking about using AI tools internally as a company, and then I'd like to go through some of the different technologies from diffusion to text generation to agents on how the merchants can benefit from those. But maybe let's start with just culturally. What is the average Shopify employee using in their day-to-day now?
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw Toby's now leaked email.
Oh yeah.
Which at the time having it leaked, I wasn't sure it was. I mean, I think now actually there's probably more benefits to downside to it, because I feel like it's getting referenced a lot, and I think it also, I don't know, from an employer brand perspective, it's kind of nice to know that like that's how we think about things.
Totally.
But this idea of like, I think every technology company has AI. They'll say that it's being utilized inside their company. I think there's a big difference between utilization and it being reflexive. And part of the reason why this email was really important was we want to make this reflexive. We want to push the boundaries of how our team thinks about it. So this idea that even a simple friction point that before you go and ask, hey, I want to add some headcount to my team. Okay, well, like substantiate why AI cannot do that. That small friction point may seem annoying, but actually what it really provides for is a much more reflexive process of like, you're right, I actually don't need this person, I can go do it then. We also built roughly about a dozen MCP servers that make pretty much every corner of Shopify's work legible. Wow. So now everyone can now find out about kind of everything else happening in the company. I'll give you the best example because I'm in kind of an earnings mode right now. It's our earnings day was today, as you guys know, which is why I'm here. I often will go to different teams and different product leaders or technology leaders and say, hey, I want to talk more about, I don't know, B2B in Europe. And they'll be like, okay, well, here's what's going on. And they'll give me the brief. Whereas I felt for this particular earnings cycle relative to previous ones, again, we've had 40 now or 39, so we have 40 coming up. I didn't have to do that nearly as much. I was able to go into the vault, which is sort of our internal wiki, and I was able to pull far more information on my own, even to the extent that I can see at what stage different projects are at. So I think that is making company operations legible, I think is, I don't know, to me, that's like the gold standard. It means that I'm not bothering anyone. I also, if I'm working at 6 o'clock in the morning and like I need to get this one thing on B2B, I don't need to wait till someone is on Slack to ask them. I can just figure it on my own. And I think the other piece of it that I think is on the developer side, which maybe is more obvious, but we actually launched MCP server for what we call dev assistance. So effectively, it allows developers to like use Cursor Chat, Windsurf, Claude Desktop in a very simple way. It's just part of their daily workflow. So that's part of it. The other part of it maybe is less sexy, but it's on the support side. We think about like our support organization, how they deal with these millions of merchants, how they work with our merchants. In many cases, there's two types of conversations. One conversation is really more like more of a low quality conversation. Things like configuration of a domain name, like username and password, picking a theme, or how do I pick a theme? Then there's like high quality conversations, which almost looks like more like business coaching. And that's like, hey, I'm noticing that I'm getting traffic from Pinterest. What should I do next? Well, you should activate the Pinterest channel. Or I'm not getting any sales at all. What should I do? Or this theme, I'm not able to configure it properly. Maybe I have the wrong theme. So one of the other things we're able to do is by giving our support organization a lot more of these tools, now they're able to just simply focus more on these high quality conversations versus low quality conversations. And it just means that when you're speaking to, if you're speaking to a human at Shopify, we're able to ensure that you're having high quality conversations and you're not taking up time from them because you need a password reset.
So what I'm hearing is like barely using AI at all. It seems like you've stuffed it everywhere. It's like we're using 3 different coding agents. We have agents everywhere.
Well, I like how deep you guys are going, because we've seen other kind of like leaks, which is clearly just a CEO wanting to PR. Signal it's purely PR.
You should map that against, again, this is why it's fun to go on the show. It's stuff I can't talk about. Okay, you should map that against technical founder-led companies, because I bet you, a dinner, like a dinner somewhere, that if you map that, you will see that generally technical founder-led companies at scale, so there's not that many of them. You won't hear these sort of, superficial kind of statements. You will see actual building. And Toby's our CEO and Mikhail from Microsoft is our CTO. There's no room for that superficiality at Shopify. It is like this is the way to go. And maybe there's a whole topic about this sort of era of founder-led companies at scale, which I think is like the best era
the
ever.
Other thing,
it's amazing.
It just means very different if it's coming from a founder-led technical CEO. If they're saying we need to be AI native, that means we're going to leverage AI and actually use it to develop workflows and processes and all these things. And then the other side is we're going to be AI native, means we're going to buy $100 million of AI tool pilots. And then we're going to churn in 6 months. It's like very different.
And a lot of decks from McKinsey.
You guys were at the Figma conference, right? Yesterday?
Yeah.
Right. So I've known Dylan for a while. There's a group of people like Dylan and Toby and Patrick and Zuck, they're just operating at a different level.
Totally.
And the fact that we're in an era now where these incredible people, these incredible leaders can lead over a long period of time, because that wasn't the case. Go back 20 years ago. You didn't see that.
No, we need the gray hairs in. Yeah,
that's right. And even the fact that they called the gray hairs or adult supervision was almost pejorative.
Totally.
This is a better era with better run companies. And there's no better person on the planet to run Shopify than Toby.
Of course.
I just on the AI, just before we get off the AI thing, one thing I do want to say also on the merchant side. One thing that I think people miss is all these great tools that all of our companies are building. I saw some of the stuff that Figma rolled out yesterday around, effectively, you can fire your agency because Figma can. And ironically, there's all these agencies in the room probably thinking our unique value proposition is now going to be somewhat disrupted by the stuff that I'm watching on at the keynote. But it's actually small businesses that I think actually will benefit far more from a lot of this tooling. Big business can as well. This is a bit of an aside, but I'm not a sports guy, but on weekends, I have this small podcast called Big Shot. I'm creating an archive of the greatest Jewish entrepreneurs of the last 50 years. Cool. So people like Izzy Sharp, who created the Four Seasons, and Linda Resnick, who created Fiji Water. I just did Bobby Kotick and Michael Milken. But I interviewed this guy, Mickey Drexler, a couple weeks ago. And Mickey Drexler is about as close as you get to retail royalty. He ran The Gap. He was CEO of The Gap for 20 years, on the board of Apple. He created Old Navy. He quasi-created J. Crew, at least made J. Crew what it is, which will a household brand. But he talked about in the old days of The Gap, sort of the heyday of The Gap in San Francisco, they have hundreds of people doing merchandising, product photography, product descriptions, layouts. And as he's sort of saying this to me, I didn't want to obviously say this to him on the podcast, but I can say it here. I was like, Mickey, like today, like literally, like the thing you get from Shopify for $39 for free with all Shopify magic can do a better job of your 300 people at the Gap. And I think actually, like people talk about this term like democratization of entrepreneurship and leveling the playing field. It's all just these like random, platitudes. But actually, what we're talking about here is that very thing. That 20 years ago, a team of 300 people were able to produce merchandising results that today, for $39 a month on Shopify, you get for free. Like you get included in your subscription. And I think when you think about like product descriptions and product, that's part of it. But even things like, like we have something called Shopify Inbox or an email marketing tool. Like the idea of automatic responses to every customer you have with highly contextualized replies. You used to have a team that would do that. And if you were a big company, you had a team. If you were a small business, you did not.
Or even downstream of that though, right? Before somebody's signing up for Shopify, a lot of them need to get some type of entity, right, to like house their business. And before now, that somebody that doesn't have any business expertise can go and even asking a simple question like, should I set up an LLC or a C corp, right? Which is like a classic thing. A lot of people botch it, and it is insane for a lot of, if somebody's getting on their entrepreneurial journey and they're going and you should get advice on it. Yeah. It's not even that complicated of advice, right? A lawyer's just going to regurgitate, well, like, here's the benefits of this, and like, here's the benefits of that. And like, given where you want to take the business, maybe you should use this. And the fact that you can now get that advice like contextualized for free from an LLM, and yeah, in many ways you shouldn't get legal advice from an LLM. It might hallucinate, but for a decision like that, it's certainly better than just guessing. And then the other stuff I'm excited about is, specifically I can imagine a world in the future where an entrepreneur makes a product, and the product's like, maybe it's a physical product, and it's slow to change something like that. Maybe you're making it overseas, you're making it here, but it's a slow process. But I can imagine a world in the future where Shopify lets you generate an entirely new kind of brand web world around that product. And you might see a conversion rate go up by 15% for something like that, for like a one-time action. And in that world, it's like the incremental benefit of like a change that could happen almost instantly is insane. So I think the implications of shopping in LLMs is exciting, but at the actual business level, the impact of Gen AI, I just think is really underpriced right now.
Yeah, I also think one of the things that is missing is a little bit like this, like we sort of think about our AI tools as very practical, like goal oriented, meaning like how they operate their business, rather than simply just rolling out random sort of features. Like, what actually is this going to do? Is this particular tool going to help them pick a better theme? Well, great, but why? Like, what does that even matter? Well, a better theme may mean better navigation, maybe higher checkout rates, maybe more customers end up buying. And when you sort of think about that in contrast to, the cost of failure in entrepreneurship now is about as low as it's ever been in the history of the world. Truly. I mean, you think about like Ben Francis creating Gymshark. I think he's the youngest billionaire ever in UK history. The fact that he was able to create this thing from his college dorm room and turn this into a multi-billion-dollar company, and he himself is now a billionaire, the prerequisite for that type of journey years ago would have been capital. It's not anymore. The other thing is, if he failed, he could have, like, it didn't really matter because he wasn't leveraging his house and taking out loans and stuff. So when you layer on all these new pieces of technology, plus this, this idea that the cost of failure is treading so close to zero, what you end up with is more people trying their hand at entrepreneurship. And that's obviously good for Shopify, but it's also just, it's a great, I mean, look what you guys have done, right? What you've built. You've built a modern media, giant out of sheer will and hustle and incredible insights around what's wrong with traditional media. Having more of these things, I think actually makes everything better.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
How do you think about messaging to the Shopify developer ecosystem? I can imagine LLMs could write new liquid templates. You can generate text. You can generate images. There's agentic workflows. There's so many things that could be the domain of plugins. You want to message that to create a really, really vibrant plugin ecosystem. But also there's certain things that you want to do internally because you have a unique position or advantage there. Is it just about communication? How do you think about that trade-off and keeping everyone happy while you're responsible to customers, shareholders, and the developer community?
Well, look, it's the I think it's called the Bill Gates line. Like, a real platform is when you create more value for others than you capture for yourself, and that
Yeah.
obviously is the case for us for our merchants, but also for our developers. And there's currently 16,000 apps in the Shopify App Store.
Yeah.
In 2024, we paid out $1 billion with a B in rev share. So, like, a huge part of Shopify's success is our developer ecosystem. So that's the first thing. The second thing, though, is that I think communication is part of it, but frankly, I think communication is often just a proxy for trust, a lack thereof, or the trust battery, right? When you say, like, there's been a lack of communication issue, it's usually a trust issue. We've been really clear with the developer community for the last, I don't know, 15 years or so that, okay, here's what you can expect. Shopify's core offering, the thing we build ourselves, will be what for most people need most of the time on the platform. And that definition, that philosophy is dynamic, meaning it's going to change. So years ago, 2012, there were apps in the App Store that would take your desktop Shopify store and make it mobile optimized. It was like, I don't know how many there were. There's probably 5 of them, maybe more. At some point, it was obvious that, okay, this is something that Shopify's core offering should do, because this is what, like, most merchants most of the time need and will expect that they're paying us to do. Like, how are you even thinking about building a desktop store or a web-based browser store on a desktop that's not mobile optimized? So eventually we basically went to those developers and said, hey, look, this is something we're going to do, but here are sort of the bounds, here are the limits of what we're doing. You can build everything beyond that. And you can look at companies, for example, like Klaviyo. We have Shopify Email. Klaviyo has built, Andrew, AB has built a multi-billion-dollar company on Shopify, which is now publicly traded, doing email marketing, because we're just clear about, here's the bounds of what Shopify email will do. Beyond that, we're not going to touch. Same, you can continue to roll that across pretty much every product category. So one is, to your point, good communication, but the other point is, like, we have 15 years of reps of building with this community, to the extent that now, if you are building an app or a piece of a product for the commerce and retail space, Shopify's App Store and our APIs are probably the best go-to-market, way to get access to millions of businesses. And that trust relationship, that ecosystem of reciprocity, is not something that we take. It's actually the first thing I did when I got to Shopify 16 years ago, is help to build that ecosystem. And we cherish it. But we're also very clear of what's coming and what's not.
16 years. We love an overnight success on this show. Thank you so much for joining. This
I
is
have so many more. I have so many more questions.
We can talk for another hour, but
we'll have to have you back.
We'll have you back next quarter.
I'd like to come back. One day I'd like to be
whenever.
co-host, and we can bring some Shopify merchants.
Absolutely, let's do it.
Let's do
a whole
Let's
Shopify
do
day.
a Shopify day.
We'll get Jim
12-hour stream back to back. Let's do it.
You know what? We could do something BFC. We can do BFCM, like Black Friday, Cyber
Here
Monday.
We go.
Giga stream.
We did $11.5 billion in 4 days, and we can actually stream and then bring different merchants on to
That'd
say,
be fantastic.
like, tell us what's happening.
QVC mode. Let's turn TBPN into QVC on.
I'm excited for that.
You guys are already going for the affiliate model. It always happens.
Yeah, it's great. Well, thank you so much.
Great talking, Harley.
We'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one.